Hobby Author Publishing presents WEFPuB Origins, Book 1, Shadows of Secrets. Written by Rodger Carr. Every shadow holds a story, every whisper a truth waiting to be unearthed. This book is dedicated to all who seek adventure in the shadows of the unknown. Before our story begins, if you enjoyed tales of friendship, discovery, and the dark secrets that bind them, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Ring the notification bell so you don't miss a single chapter. Your support helps this hobby become your entertainment. And now, our adventure begins.
Chapter 2, Shattered Roots. The Grand Hall was another perfect cage, grander than the forest, but no less confining. It stood untouched by the honest, messy chaos of the battle, a sanctuary of cold tradition. Sunlight, filtered through stained glass windows, fell in precise, geometric patterns of emerald and sapphire, painting the polished stone floor with a beauty that felt like a judgment. The air was still, scrubbed clean of the scent of blood and smoke, carrying only the sterile perfume of beeswax and aged, unfeeling wood. It was the smell of a perfectly preserved tomb. The council's thrones, carved from ancient heartwood, loomed in a silent, crescent-shaped tribunal. They weren't just furniture. They were the forest's judgment made manifest, woven into the living architecture of the hall. Elder Moralis sat in the highest seat, her face as unreadable as a weathered stone, a monument to elven impassivity. To her left, Elder Alor's gaze was a hawk's, sharp and predatory, his disapproval a physical weight in the room. He was the voice of Gerrod's elven head, the embodiment of every rule he had just broken. Beside him, Elder Ilvara's quiet worry was a softer, but no less damning, form of censure. The great doors swung open, the sound echoing like the closing of a trap. Gerrod stepped inside. His boots, still caked with the mud and blood of the real world, felt impossibly heavy on the pristine floor, each footfall a vulgar intrusion on the hall's sterile perfection. He had chosen mercy, a messy, human impulse. Now he would face the clean, elven consequence. He stood before them, the weight of their collective gaze a physical yoke on his shoulders. The scent of polished wood and burning incense was a cloying perfume meant to mask the stink of the truth clinging to his clothes. Elder Alor spoke first, his voice sharp as a freshly honed blade. You had the Orcish chieftain at your mercy, and yet you let him live. His glare was a scalpel, seeking the weakness, the flaw, the human stain on Gerrod's soul. Do you understand what you've done? The elven head in Gerrod's mind screamed at him to apologize, to explain, to fit his actions into their rigid framework of logic. The human heart refused. I spared him, he said, his voice steady. Killing him would have changed nothing. The cycle would continue. The cycle must continue, Alor scoffed, his knuckles whitening on the armrest of his throne. It is the predator and the prey. It is the logic of the world. That is how we survive. You let a warlord live, a monster who will return seeking vengeance. Ilvara's voice was softer, but it cut just as deep. We trusted your judgment, Gerrod. The disappointment in her tone was a heavier blow than Alor's anger. Now we must ask if that trust was misplaced. Silence. Then Myralis, the voice of the mountain itself, spoke. The laws of Verdant Haven are clear. Her gaze was final, a geological fact. Your actions have defied them. He had known this was the only possible outcome in their perfect, predictable world. He had known the price of his choice. Still, when the words came, they struck like a shard of ice in his chest. You are banished. He lifted his head, the grand hall and all its cold, perfect beauty swimming before his eyes. The silence pressed in, but he would not let it be the last word. The messy, human part of him, his mother's legacy, demanded to be heard. Killing Gorok would not have saved the grove, he said, his voice firm. It would only have ensured another war. Spare me your naivety, Alor sneered. Orcs do not change. Mercy is wasted on beasts. Gerrod met his gaze, unflinching. I saw no honor in slaughtering a wounded enemy who had nothing left but his rage. You say I risked Verdant Haven's safety. I say I gave it a chance. Ilvara's expression was unrateable, but Aranis, standing near the edge of the hall, gave him the smallest, almost imperceptible nod of understanding. It was a flicker of warmth in a frozen landscape. "You put faith in a creature that has shown us nothing but destruction," Morales said. "You believe your mercy will change that?" "I believe that someone has to try," Gerrod said, "or this will never end." The weight of centuries hung in the air, a vast, silent glacier of tradition that his small, defiant words could not hope to move. But he did not regret them. The council's debate was a formality, a ritual dance of predictable steps. Aelor argued for law, for the cold, hard logic of their ways. Ilvara, her heart perhaps touched by his plea, argued for a new path. Even Aranis and Erevan spoke, their words weaving a tapestry of doubt and duty. But Gerrod knew it was theater. The verdict had been decided before he had even stepped into the hall. "The exile remains." Elder Myralis rose, her expression solemn, her voice the sound of a closing tomb. "The laws of Verdant Haven are the foundation of our survival. You have broken them." The hall fell deathly silent. "You are banished. From this day forward, you will walk as an outsider. You may not return." The finality of it stole his breath. He forced himself to stand tall. "I do not regret my choice," he said, his voice steady. "Mercy is not weakness. If we refuse to change, we are as doomed as those we fear." Morales studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. "May you find your path beyond these walls, Gerrod of no home." The doors opened behind him, an invitation to leave the only world he had ever known. He took one last look at the beautiful cage, at its perfect, sterile light, and then, without another word, he turned and stepped into the honest, messy, and terrifying freedom of exile. Packing was a ritual of severance, each folded tunic, each coiled rope, a thread being cut. His hands moved with the numb efficiency of a man gutting a deer, a task to be performed without thought. Beside him, his father, Galadrim, moved with a quiet purpose that felt like a judgment, his every motion steeped in the calm, unyielding logic of elven duty. "How can you accept this?" Gerrod's voice was a rough, wounded sound in the quiet of their dwelling. Galadrim's eyes, the color of a winter forest, glanced at him, and in them, Gerrod saw a reflection of the council's cold reason. "Sometimes the path of wisdom requires sacrifice. You've chosen a harder road." The words were so much like Aranis's, so much like the elven head inside him, that it felt like a betrayal. "Mercy is not a crime." Gerrod's fists clenched, the knuckles white. "It is in their eyes. They are bound by laws older than both of us." Galadrim's voice remained infuriatingly steady. His father's calm was a wall of polished stone. Gerrod wanted to beat his fists against it, to scream, to make him feel the raw, ragged injustice of it all. "You were silent during the council, father. You didn't speak. Why?" Galadrim stiffened. He took a long breath, the kind a man takes before diving into icy water. "You think I didn't want to speak?" "You're my father," Gerrod snapped, the words tearing from him. "You should have backed me." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the crackle of the hearth fire. Finally, Galadrim's voice came, rough with something Gerrod had never heard before. "Regret." "It wasn't silence out of neglect, Gerrod. I stayed quiet because sometimes silence is the only way to see the truth. When the world crumbles, when you lose everything, you'll see what you're truly made of." The words were a cold comfort, another elven riddle. "Then why didn't you teach me how to carry this?" Gerrod muttered, almost to himself. "I tried," Galadrim replied, his voice heavy with years of unspoken sorrow. "But some burdens, son, you have to learn to carry on your own." His father's gaze was distant now, looking past him, as if seeing a ghost. "Your mercy. It's in your mother's blood. I see it in you." The mention of his mother was a sudden, unexpected warmth. "My mother?" "Aye, she believed in the power of choice. She would have understood." The words landed like a thunderclap. His mother's legacy. It wasn't just his elven blood that shaped him. It was her messy, human heart. The thought was a small, fragile seed of hope in the barren landscape of his grief. But the anger returned, hot and sharp. "The council? They see nothing but a half-blood," he spat, the old wound of his otherness tearing open. "They judge me for what I am, not who I am. They sit in their ivory towers, and I'm nothing but an outcast in their eyes, a half-elf who doesn't belong." "You think my silence was agreement?" Galadrim's voice was suddenly taut, the polished stone of his composure cracking. "Every moment they deliberated, I stood there wanting to roar defiance." He took a step closer, his eyes filled with a desperate, fearful honesty. "But I know the council. What you did, Gerrod, sparing Gorok, by the most ancient laws of the Haven, the penalty is not exile, it is death. Gerrod froze, the word a physical blow. They showed you leniency, Galadrim continued, his voice rough. A leniency they granted only because you are my son, because of Elysia's memory. If I had argued, if I had championed your mercy, I feared it would shatter that fragile leniency. I feared, his voice cracked, that my defense would have been seen as defiance, forcing their hand towards the executioner's block. I feared my words would sign your death warrant. He looked away, shame and regret warring on his face. So, I stood silent. It felt like tearing out my own tongue, but I chose the silence I believed would keep you alive, even if it meant you would hate me for it. Gerrod stared at his father, the man he had seen his entire life as a pillar of unwavering elven logic, and saw for the first time the terrified, loving human heart beating beneath. The anger in his own chest didn't vanish, but it was joined by a new, aching wave of understanding. His father reached into his robe. "There's something you should have," he murmured, his eyes downcast. He opened his palm, revealing a small object wrapped in old velvet. "Your mother's necklace." His own hand drifted instinctively to his chest. We each carried one, a matched set. Mine? I have not taken it off since the day she left. A deep, ancient sorrow filled his eyes. It belongs with you now, a connection to her, perhaps more potent than memory alone. Gerrod took it, a deep green stone, smooth and warm, on a simple braided chain. It shimmered with an inner light, a small, captured piece of a wilder, less perfect world. He slipped it over his head, the weight of it a warm, grounding presence against his skin. It was a piece of her, a piece of the messy, human chaos he had just chosen to embrace. "I'll find her," he whispered, the words a sudden, unexpected vow. "I'll find the truth." Galadrim said nothing, but the look in his eyes was no longer just sorrow. It was pride. He met Alara and Erevan at the edge of the courtyard. Their presence was a comfort, a final reminder of the fellowship he was leaving behind. They walked with him in silence to the ancient marker stones that signified the true edge of Verdant Haven's protected lands. "Go to Oswagonia," Erevan said, his usual stoicism softened. "Find your mother. Bring her home." Alara's hand brushed his arm. "You'll find her. And when you do, remember, it's not just the journey that matters, but who you become along the way." He swallowed the lump in his throat. He crossed the invisible line, leaving the clean, sterile scent of the haven behind, and turned toward the open road. The path ahead was a messy, uncertain, and terrifying wilderness. It was his. With a final nod to his friends, he turned his back on the beautiful cage and walked forward into the night. His true quest had only just begun.
And that concludes this chapter of Shadows of Secrets. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to support the series and helps others discover our adventure. I'd love to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Every secret uncovered just leads to a new mystery, and I enjoy reading your predictions. Or, for even more interaction, join us on our Facebook page. The adventure continues. The next chapter is ready and waiting for you. You can find it right here on the end screen or by following the link in the description below. Until next time, may you find your own adventures in the shadows.